So this guy convinced the entire soccer world he was a professional player for 26 years, and he never kicked a ball in a single game. Now, his name is Carlos Kaiser, and he's a Brazilian who somehow became a legend. He made a fortune collecting paychecks from professional clubs while never actually playing. Now, Carlos is 16 years old living in Mexico, and he's actually got some talent. He gets scouted by Puebla FC and lands his first professional contract. But here's the thing about Carlos though. He hates Mexican food, he's homesick, and honestly, he's actually not that into playing soccer. So within months of getting there, boom, he fakes a muscle injury in training. And that fake injury gives Carlos the most brilliant idea of his life. So Carlos heads back to Brazil in the early 1980s, and he's ready to put his plan into action. He's going to take his brief stint at Puebla, where he never actually played, and spin it into this whole story about being an experienced international player. And bro is smart about it. He shows up looking the part. He's got this Franz Beckenbauer mullet. He's tan, he's muscular, and he's talking a big game about being a goal scorer. First stop is Botafogo, one of Brazil's biggest clubs. And here's where Carlos gets really creative. He starts paying youth players to slam into him during practice so he can dramatically roll around injured. The guy's basically directing his own injury scenes like he's Steven Spielberg or something. Oh, but the best part is when clubs bring in doctors to examine his never-ending ailments. One club even brings in a witch doctor to figure out what's wrong with him. And Carlos just dismisses the guy like not even black magic can fix what I have. The audacity of this man is unreal. Now, meanwhile, Carlos is living his best life off the pitch. He's hitting up all the fancy nightclubs in Rio, and here's his next genius move. He starts impersonating his friend Renato Gaucho, who's an actual superstar player. Carlos would walk into clubs claiming to be Renato, showing women highlight videos of Renato's goals and being like, yeah, that's me scoring. Until one night, the real Renato shows up at a club and the bouncer's like, Renato's already inside. And Renato's just laughing because he knows exactly who it is. Instead of being mad though, he thinks it's hilarious. That's the kind of charm Carlos had. Even when he got caught red-handed, people just found him entertaining. But Carlos isn't done yet. In 1986, he pulls off his most outrageous international con. His friend Fabio Barros is playing for French team Gazélec Ajaccio, and he actually believes Carlos deserves a shot. So Barros recommends Carlos to his club, and boom, Carlos signs with the European team. So picture this, Carlos shows up in Corsica for his big unveiling. The fans are expecting to see some skills, maybe some juggling, some shooting practice. Instead, Carlos kisses the club badge theatrically and then starts booting every single ball into the stands as souvenirs for the fans. The crowd is going wild thinking this guy is so generous. They have no idea he's literally getting rid of all the balls so he doesn't have to demonstrate any actual soccer skills. He even hands flowers to the club president's wife to complete the show. Pure genius. And Carlos being Carlos, he never plays a single game in France either. He just sneaks back to Brazil and later plants a fake newspaper article claiming he was Ajaccio's top scorer. The man was out here creating his own fake news before fake news was even a thing. Now fast forward to the late 1980s and Carlos signs with Bangu, a small club owned by this absolute madman named Castor de Andrade. And Castor's not just any owner. This guy's basically a Brazilian Tony Soprano. He's a crime boss. He carries a pew-pew everywhere, and he literally once chased a referee around the field waving his pew-pew because he didn't like a call. Yeah, you do not want to mess with Castor. So Castor signs Carlos with all this fanfare. The headlines are screaming, Bangu has its king. And Carlos is doing his usual routine, looking the part, talking a big game, then immediately getting injured and sitting on the bench collecting paychecks. For months this goes on. Carlos keeps faking injuries, Castor keeps believing him, and everything seems to be going according to plan. But then, one day, Bangu is losing a crucial match and Castor is absolutely livid. He storms over to Carlos and orders him to get off the bench and save the game. Now Carlos knows this is it. If he actually steps on that field, everyone's going to see he can't play soccer to save his life. So what does he do? This absolute madman hops the fence and starts a full-blown fistfight with the opposing team's fans. The referee immediately shows him a red card before he can even substitute into the game. After the match, Carlos goes to Castor's office and he's got tears in his eyes. He's like, boss, I'm so sorry. Those fans called you a crook and I just couldn't let them disrespect you like that. I had to defend your honor. And Castor, this dangerous mobster who's killed people for less, he's so moved by Carlos's loyalty that he gives him a contract extension with a pay raise. The man got a raise for starting a fight to avoid playing soccer. That is some next level con artistry right there. Now, here's the thing though. Carlos isn't just getting away with this because he's lucky. He's actually providing value to these teams, just not the kind you'd expect. See, Carlos has turned himself into like the ultimate locker room entertainer. He's organizing parties, he's getting players into the best nightclubs, he's basically acting as the team's social coordinator. In one legendary incident, Carlos arranged for 10 gorgeous women to visit the team hotel for an unofficial pregame party. He's escorting players to different rooms like some kind of hedonistic cruise director. The players loved him for it, and that's why his teammates protected him. They all knew he couldn't play, but they kept quiet because Carlos made their lives more fun. Like one time, players put Carlos in the middle of a passing circle just to mess with him. The guy's running around gasping for breath, diving at shadows, completely unable to get the ball, while his own teammates, including actual World Cup winners, are just laughing at him. But somehow, even after watching him embarrass himself like that, Carlos would just flash that smile and start telling jokes, and everyone would forget he was supposed to be a soccerer. As Brazilian soccer legend Bebeto said, his chat was so good that if you let him open his mouth, he'd charm you. But Carlos had one more trick up his sleeve. To make himself seem more important, he started carrying around this chunky cell phone, which was like the ultimate status symbol in the 1980s. He'd have these loud conversations in English about transfer offers from European clubs. Coaches and teammates would hear him going, "Yes, Manchester United, I'm very interested in your offer." Until one day, a trainer discovers that Carlos's phone is completely plastic. When confronted about it, Carlos just shrugs and goes, "I wanted the club to release me so I could move on to the next team." The man had zero shame whatsoever. Now, you might be wondering, how the hell is Carlos getting away with all this? Well, remember, this is the 1980s. There's no internet, no social media, no way for clubs to easily fact-check a guy's background. Plus, Carlos is smart about it. He's befriending journalists who write fake articles about him. He's got teammates protecting him because he gets them into nightclubs, and he never stays at one club long enough for people to get too suspicious. This ridiculous con continues through the late 80s and early 90s. Carlos bounces between clubs like Fluminense, Vasco da Gama, and America, always pulling the same routine, always getting injured, always charming his way into everyone's good graces, never actually playing soccer. By the early 90s, his scam is basically an open secret among players, but managers keep falling for it because Carlos is just that convincing. The myth just keeps growing. Carlos even perfected the art of the fake family tragedy. He'd claim his grandmother died like 17 different times to skip matches. One teammate joked that Carlos had more grandmothers than goals, which was technically infinite grandmothers since he never scored. Eventually, though, Carlos quietly retires in the early 90s without ever officially playing a professional match. For years, his story remains mostly unknown outside of Brazilian soccer circles. But then in 2011, Brazilian media finally exposes the whole saga, and Carlos becomes a folk hero overnight. And true to form, when he goes on a talk show to discuss his con, he turns the interview into a circus by bringing a bikini-clad female bodybuilder on stage to distract everyone. Even when telling the truth about his lies, he's still pulling cons. And you know what Carlos said about the whole thing? "I wanted to be among the other players. I just didn't want to play. It's everybody else's problem if they want me to be a soccer player." That is wild.